So I wanted to do a basically off the cuff, like fresh out of seeing Bugonia review. And it happens to be Halloween night. I had another video planned that I wanted to be my Halloween video. It may or may not come out tonight, depending on how long I decide to stay up and how long that video takes to record and edit. But I'm definitely going to get this one out because this one is just going to be quick. This is just going to be my initial feelings. I'm sure when I process everything that I've been through watching this movie, uh, that I might have a different opinion or a different rating. I really don't know what rating to give it. I gave it a 4 to 5 on Letterboxd, but that's almost like a placeholder because, wow, I do not know how to treat. Oh, sorry if the glare is. So, for a bit of context, this movie is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. For people who don't know who he is, it's kind of hard to explain. He's a very artsy, kind of highbrow director. His most famous movie is probably Poor Things, that got a lot of recognition at the Oscars, which I'm very glad it did because it's a very good movie. And it's very unconventional, and it does that for a purpose. But this movie is a little different about that. Yorgos Lanthimos has also done tons of other movies that are kind of in similar veins that, borrow off of directing styles of other directors while being original, but generally his tone is he tends to have like this almost like Wes Anderson kind of deadpan sort of acting that people do usually in these very heightened or outright like supernatural or ridiculous situations. This movie is not really that. Not fully. The main difference I noticed in it right off the bat from his other movies was that the acting is incredibly serious, incredibly well wrought, and takes you on just an emotional roller coaster and makes it hard for you because usually his movies have very dark elements, but a lot of those are put in this kind of absurdity so that they can be played off as dark comedy. Um, this movie definitely has dark comedy for it for sure, especially as it leads up to the ending, which I will talk about. I won't give exact spoilers, but I will let you know just the general path this movie takes, um, and why um, why I found that quite like almost had my like was shaking my fist right at the end. Like that's what this movie is really. Um, but at the same time, I kind of appreciate it on another level because I do understand there was a purpose to that. Anyway, I'll give you the basic premise. Um, so Jesse Plemons' character is this severely mentally ill, like delusional guy who has this history of severe trauma that's gradually unfolded throughout the film. Um, and he has a cousin who is clearly mentally challenged. And this is part of like why I felt like was shaking my fist at the end of the movie because this character is played so well. The actor really does genuinely come across like he's genuinely playing a mentally challenged character. He's not doing a caricature. He's not doing over the top. He's very realistic about it. And it's very hard to see a portrayal like that in media. Like there's just not a lot that exists. And the mentally challenged character is you end up really feeling for this character because he is basically strung along in Jesse Plemons' delusion. It's hard to explain the full context without seeing the movie, which is part of where it gets frustrating because of how the twist turns out. He gets strung up in Jesse Plemons' delusions, and they almost have like we're going to create this big dream together that is never going to happen. It's almost like a mice and men kind of feel to it. But the mentally challenged character, I believe his name is Don. I don't know who the actor's name is. Whoever he is, he did a great job. And Don, the interesting thing is that Jesse Plemons' delusion is so advanced. Like the premise is that he kidnaps Emma Stone thinking she's an alien, but he has this whole like world in his head of how she's an alien. and how this all connects to the trauma in his family, and also the fact that I think he lives in a small town. He's poor. She's a rich CEO. So there's definitely like an inversion of roles that like he has the power over her, which again all gets thrown out the window. But I'll mention that. But his Jesse Plemons like world is so complex that the mentally challenged character can't understand it at all, and he really doesn't believe it, like even in his heart. At least what I thought the message, what the movie was going for, which again gets totally thrown away, was that this character who can't understand a lot of things does understand the actual truth of the movie, and he is actually able to see things from basically a neutral perspective, and he's the only like good character, not because he's mentally challenged necessarily, but because he doesn't have this big chip on his shoulder. He doesn't go around like pretending he knows certain things or assuming certain things of people, and he doesn't go around blaming the entire world on him. He just wants what's best for him and his cousin, who he's kind of unfortunately like really attached to, like to the point where it's codependent, and he doesn't understand how dangerous his cousin is becoming. So what I thought the movie was going for, how I thought the story was unfolding, it was basically an exploration of how Jesse Plemons became the way he is, and how he was like born basically a normal person, like mentally. Trauma and hardship, and he became a horrible person because of it. So you don't condone anything he does in the movie because he's horribly abusive and unstable, but you understand why he is that way. You understand the systems that failed him that way. You understand how Emma Stone, who's the victim in this situation, but again, she is kind of like inherently a worse person, um, because she's very like sociopathic and manipulative, and she doesn't react to things normally, which makes sense in another context of what this movie actually turns out to be. That's what you think the movie's about. That it's about how that's like an inversion of like how you think people's psychology work, how people who do bad things can have started out good, and how people who are good people can have started out bad, and how people get caught in the mix of all that crossfire, um, and how that kind of like this classic story of how the villain is sort of created. That's what I thought generally this movie was going for. However, that is not what this movie is going for. That is not what this movie is going for at all. It goes into this extremely dark and depressing exploration of all the themes I was talking about before, about like Jesse Plemons' spiral into madness, and the mentally disabled cousin getting involved in all of this and having an incredibly tragic, like heartbreaking, like I was like absolutely tearing up, like no, it can't, like he's not going to do what I think he's going to do. And then that happened, and I was like, oh my god, I don't want to watch this movie anymore, because that actor made you genuinely care for that character, and made you genuinely feel like he was an intellectually disabled person and not just a caricature of one. But then all that goes on for like however long that runtime is, like 2 hours, more like 2 hours 15 minutes. I don't know the actual runtime. I think it's like 2 hours 30 minutes, or probably like 2 hours 50 minutes. Then in the last 10 minutes, it takes a complete nosedive, or whatever, complete tonal shift. It goes from being this really tragic, depressing movie that's in this very kind of heightened scenario, but the themes that are explored totally happen in real life. They happen all the time. Um, and it throws all that away. None of what you've seen in those previous 2 hours plus matters. Literally none of it matters. Doesn't matter that the thing happened, that whole tragic arc happened with the mentally disabled character, because that's nullified. It doesn't matter that about Jesse Plemons' trauma or his delusions or his psychological unraveling, because all of that is nullified. It doesn't matter that you're seeing like sympathy in Emma Stone because she's being victimized here, even though she's initially an unlikable person, because that is nullified. All these emotions you've been made to feel, and basically what is almost played completely straight, save for it's in this kooky situation, and there's definitely dark comedy in it. everything that you've been made to feel in this very like well wrought emotional drama that deals with real like just really depressing, just bleak emotional issues that's made you feel like I felt so demoralized at it, and I'm like, this is a great movie, but it's like the saddest movie I've ever watched. And then it just takes that complete 180. And it's literally like it doesn't make sense when you go back through the movie. Of course, there are hints to it, and it wouldn't be like Yorgos is not somebody to do twists, but it's such a the way it's presented. It's not like you wouldn't have necessarily thought that, but the way it's presented and the way it completely nullifies the entire previous rest of the story. The way that you thought the movie was about all these different things that it's laying out, and then it turns out to be about none of those things at all. The way that you like felt heartbroken, and now that doesn't matter because all that's rectified basically. I was like, so what's the point of this movie? It was basically just like a middle finger to the audience, is how I felt. And that's maybe just my initial reaction, but it was literally like an Adult Swim thing where they would like just make up some nonsense, goofy ending. It felt like that, like tonally, like so. I was like, so what was the point of all we saw before? The only thing I can think is that either it is like, okay, this whole movie is about having your expectations flipped and like who is morally good and who is morally bad, and then you've just had that flipped. So maybe it was a double turnaround switcheroo, maybe, or it is just Yorgos trolling the audience, or it is just the longest cinematic Norm Macdonald joke where it just makes basically no sense at the end, and you're like, okay, so what was the point? Um, and it is ballsy to kind of troll the audience at the end. I'm not saying that that's not like something that shouldn't ever be done, but it just feels so, I don't know, so cheap, because if you look at it as a story, having that twist in literally the last 10 minutes, like a literally like almost like when Neo is plugged out of the Matrix and he wakes up in the pods. It's almost like that much of a shocker. Except that again, when you look up at all the details and what happened before, not all of them line up with what that twist is. And you have that twist in the last 10 minutes, and it just turns into from this serious drama into just absurd goofiness. Um, it's like, why?
Why?
Why? What was the point? The only thing I can think is that it's this super meta commentary. Maybe this is the film nerd in me. It's this super meta commentary of Yorgos making fun of film nerds who are trying to read too much in his movies. Like, oh, it didn't matter anyway. So screw you for thinking my movies are deeper than they actually are. That's the only reason I can think he decided to pull that wild of a twist and a tonal shift. And again, there's nothing wrong with doing a huge plot twist. There's nothing wrong with doing a tonal shift, but it has to make sense. And the rest of the movie before it has to make some sense. Otherwise, the rest of the movie before it does not, there is no justification for its existence. There is no justification for all those complex themes you just explored. Um, just to say, okay, none of those matter. Literally, none of those matter. None of the points I was making matters. And again, if it was like some goofy surrealist comedy and we just knew that out from the start, I did think it was going to be more like a traditional Lanthimos movies, where it was going to be like The Favorite, where it was like just a weird kind of dark comedy, um, but mostly comedic and not as serious as it mostly was. Um, I could understand like feeling like kind of hoodwinked, thinking it was gonna be that from the trailers, and then seeing this really serious movie. But that's completely different from even that. It made me thinking, okay, that is a wild move. I kind of appreciate him doing that. I also appreciate everything in the movie up to that twist because it was a really well made, albeit really depressing movie. But at the same time, I'm like, as a movie, putting that all together, it doesn't work. It doesn't work either. Again, I believe he was intentionally doing it like as a joke, basically, as a big prank on film watchers, because otherwise it's just a huge cop out that literally makes no sense. I mean, not that it's not foreshadowed in any way possible. You could probably even guess what I'm hinting at. Um, just based on the details I've told you, it's not like it's such a wild out there twist. Um, it's just the way everything is set up doesn't make sense for that payoff. And because so much of it is nullified that meant things in the movie, it makes me feel frustrated as a viewer. So I don't know how to rate this movie. Um, on technical levels, it was a great movie. Pretty much expect that from every Yorgos Lanthimos movie. Acting was actually, I would say, just superb because most of the acting was just so emotionally well wrought, which again means nothing in the context of the entire film. Um, just general film markers um, for making a good film. It was all great all across the board, but the way they handled the plot twist and the shift in tone. I mean, I've seen plenty of films with major plot twists and shifts in tone. I've not seen one that has made me that angry. The only ones that I've seen that have made me that angry is stuff like The Number 23, where it's literally just a terribly written movie. But I don't think this is a terribly written movie. I think there was some intent behind that. And maybe I kind of guessed at the intent, but I feel like the intent was just to troll people. And I'm like, okay, you can troll people, but that's not a movie. You can't say I made a great movie and also I just made this to fuck with you. You know, that's as spoiler free with revealing exactly how I felt about Bugonia. Let me know what you thought. I do not know at all what the critical consensus is on this movie. I've literally not heard a single other person's like actual thought out review of this. I literally went into this almost blind. I just knew the premise. I'd seen like one trailer. I knew this was a remake of another movie. I believe it. I'm trying to think. It might have been a Japanese movie. So maybe the Japanese movie ends the same way. I'm not sure. Maybe this wasn't a Yorgos middle finger to the audience. Maybe it was just remaking a movie that was a middle finger to the audience. I don't know. It feels like Yorgos added that spin on it. Um, but that's just me. Regardless, like if that was an original or if it wasn't, I still have the same core issue with that. Um, so I hope that made sense. It'll make sense if you watch the film. And again, I will warn you, the film for the vast majority of its runtime is pretty upsetting. Even if you like really dark movies, this is one particularly that is just really bleak. Um, and it feels really real despite being in a heightened kind of atmosphere. So I will warn you, it's a tough watch and it's a long watch until you get to the ending, and then you're like, what the fuck at the ending. So, but you have to watch until the ending because otherwise you're watching a completely different movie up until the ending. Um, yeah, so I hope that made sense maybe to some of you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and thanks for watching.